Well, as you all may have heard, Donald J. Trump is running for president. And I have some concerns, some questions about some of his views, some of the directions he might go as a presidential candidate and potentially as president. But I also think that his supporters have a lot of legitimate concerns, a lot of legitimate views that aren't always clearly articulated by those who talk about Trump and his campaign. So today I wanted to go and find a thoughtful Trump supporter and hopefully have some respectful dialogue about what this gentleman, Gavin, what he likes about Trump, and raise some of my concerns about Trump and hear what he has to say. So, Gavin, thank you for being with us. If you would, to start with, just for the viewers, give kind of a sense of a little bit about yourself, your political views, to get us started, please.
All right. Well, I'm a ex-liberal in a sense, now conservative, and I've just lately been taking a more reactionary approach to my politics, and I have found that I align very much with Trump in most of his beliefs. Obviously, not entirely. That's never going to happen with unless you're the person. But I would say that he's showing a lot of hope and security and nationalism that Americans need right now. And with my reactionary beliefs, I think I've just aligned with him well enough to the point where I would say I openly support him for president.
Okay, excellent. Now, I'm curious if you had a second pick or a third pick candidate this year, or candidates you've supported in the past. I think just some people are curious, kind of, where Trump supporters are coming from ideologically. So, are there, again, second pick this year, or prior candidates that you've liked that could give us a sense of who else you find appealing on the political scene?
Well, this might be actually a little weird, but Bernie Sanders is actually kind of my second pick, mostly because Trump and Sanders have a very common ground with the fact that neither of them are really being funded by any sort of large corporations or banks, that kind of thing. I really want to keep money out of politics as best as possible, and obviously you have to, raise money for these campaigns they're running, but Trump has his own money and Bernie's been raising it in grassroots style. So I really respect both of their ways to gain attention from the general mass of people of the American body politic.
Sure, that's really interesting. I've heard a lot of people who are interested in those two candidates specifically, and I think, as you said, a lot of it's kind of they're outside the mainstream in ways that are appealing. Well, moving to Trump specifically, could you give kind of a summary of kind of what draws you to him as a candidate? What are the issues that you find most appealing?
So, like I've said, I've become a lot more traditionalist and reactionary, and I would say kind of isolationist in my immigration beliefs. And obviously, I think Trump is extremely, well spoken on these issues about immigration. He's very straightforward about what needs to happen because you really can't dance around this issue. Europe's been trying to. They've been allowing immigrants in and saying, they're going to limit the amount and hope for, good assimilation. But obviously, it's failing with the mass rapes that were occurring
Yeah.
in Cologne, Germany, and in many other cities in Europe
And
on New
being
Year's Eve.
suppressed. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
and being suppressed by moderators across internet forums and mainstream media in general. The establishment media, of course, doesn't want you to know about these kind of things or think about it because immigration is great for them. It's cheap labor. It's all sorts of good things for the economy that really don't have to benefit the actual people living in the country. It really is more about the businesses who are in control of the politics at the moment. Um, anyway, back to Trump
yeah,
and his immigration policies. It's just a lot of it. He's very absolutist, where he says, the only way you can stop this from happening is, at least in regards to the Muslim rape that was happening in Europe, is to stop them from coming into the country. And it that comes down to a question of whether or not it is a right of other people of other nations to immigrate into other nations. Is that a God-given or nature-given right for them to be able to freely move to places that will treat them better? And I would personally disagree with that. That it's not a God-given right. It's not a right. It's a privilege. It is a fantastic privilege from the people who have built this nation for so long, and the people who have kept the government going and kept things stable. It is their right to say whether or not they want more immigrants or people from foreign nations coming to the country, and especially if there is damage being done to the people, if there's rape, and if there is protests. There was hundreds of burned cars all across Europe too in New Year's. Like, this is the stuff that of nightmares, and it's
Mhm.
happening right now.
And as you said, there's I think you really hit the nail on the head in terms of the question: is there a right to immigrate where you want, or even where you're going to be better off? Frankly, I know for me anyway, I would love to be able to bring every genuinely poor, needy person, into America or into Europe or someplace where they could make a better living, but it's impossible. The sheer numbers make that
Sure.
impossible, and that means immigration policy. If you're going to have a border, then you have to have an immigration policy, which is something other than everybody can come in. Certainly,
Yeah, and it's a humanitarian cause in that sense where yeah, it would feel great to help all of the world's poor, but maybe it's not so much of an immigration issue as an issue within their own nations that we need to be fixing in the first
hmm
place. The source of the problem, so they have to stop or they can stop running away from their homes and their nations. Um, I mean, that's really what it comes down to me is that I think we're just approaching this extremely incorrectly by letting them immigrate into the countries because it creates an underclass of people. It creates all sorts of tension and friction among the people who are already living there and the new immigrants. And it's just, to me, it just doesn't seem like the right way to go about it. And it's obviously a very complex issue that really,
sure.
goes way deeper than that. But to me, it just seems like we're approaching it from the wrong angle, and
hmm
it's only going to cause things to get worse socially and economically.
And what you said about back home in their countries. I think even with this current Syrian refugee crisis, it's it's not like the United States is completely uninvolved in allowing that crisis, the
Not at
beginnings of
all.
that crisis to get started. And now
Yeah.
we find ourselves, to some extent, as a result of our own feckless policies. Now here we are with this crisis, certainly.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I think that honestly we are one of the main, if not the main cause of ISIS rising in the first place. Because we've dismantled other extreme Islamic like dictators, but obviously something else is going to come up in their place. It's the serpent that you cut off the head and three grow in its place. It's just
sure.
that's the natural order of things, especially with I wouldn't necessarily say the religion itself is to blame, but Islam is very violent. And the people who adhere to the religion are often very violent. I think there's statistics, and you can go ahead and look this up if you want to afterwards, that say around 60% of Muslim moderates have views that parallel with ISIS still, how they believe of treating Westerners, treating people who commit adultery, like throwing acid in their face or cutting their hands off. There's an actual decently, like, it's a large chunk of the Muslim religion that has admitted to being parallel with these beliefs and actually thinking it's not that bad and that it's a right moral course of action. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that worries me.
Yeah, no, and I would love to pursue the particular topic of Muslim theology as well, because I think the 60% figure, I think it would depend exactly what we were asking,
Sure.
what percentage. But yeah, I mean, frankly, the difficulty with Islam as a religion is that it comes out of the Quran, out of Muhammad, and Muhammad himself was a warrior. And wrote and a caravan robber, in fact, in various parts of his life. And so
Yeah.
you do have some of those seeds of, not that again, I think we would agree, certainly not all Muslims, but that there's those seeds in that religion that you can find to justify aberrant behavior.
Yep.
But moving beyond immigration,
Sure.
are there other particular issues that you find Trump particularly appealing on, or kind of more just in general you like his approach, or let's put immigration to the side. What else? If there wasn't
Sure.
immigration, what do you like about Trump?
I definitely agree with him on Planned Parenthood, that kind of thing. We have similar economic standpoints, although I do not fully agree with his. I think he wants to lower the tax on the upper class and the rich.
It's been a little unclear, I think, from what I've seen.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
there is some unclearness to his policy when he goes to speeches. Like his last speech, he really spent most of the time trashing his other candidates, which
yeah.
is really what gets him, you know, all the good stuff, all the new followers, because they
It
want to see
is.
someone who's very strong,
Mm-hmm.
someone who's very well spoken, and who is able to deconstruct the beliefs of his opponents, with simple adjectives and that kind
Yeah,
of thing.
sure, sure.
Just ruining like $100 million campaigns with a few words. That is what he's pretty much
Low
famous for.
energy.
Low energy.
Yeah.
This Bush.
Well, do you think the would you say that's kind of the appeal? Because again, I know you've talked to a lot of other people about the, what they find appealing about Trump as well. Do you think it is just that, kind of telling it like it is and uh, just the bold, blunt speech? Do you think that's what's driving a lot of the appeal?
Certainly. I mean, look at American politics, man. It's been for the last 10, 20 years, it's really been a celebrity show.
Yeah,
And whoever has and maybe it's always been like this. I'm not going to pretend like I know this is just what I've been alive to see. But,
sure.
it's just it's a celebrity show where it's whoever's the best spoken, who is the most confident, who goes up there and really it doesn't matter if they give every little detail on their exactly what they're doing and how they plan to fix whatever they're trying to fix in America. Bernie Sanders is the same way. He's a little vague. He just keeps talking about that dang 1% or whatever. It's just it's really a popularity contest, and of course Trump is winning because the guy is a man. He is
Yeah,
just the epitome of just like a brutal man, not willing to silence himself for the sake of political correctness, which really I believe political correctness is just trying to censor free speech. It's all they're trying to do. It's just totalitarian to me that our society is even allowing that to be some sort of part of it. But that's another reason I am aligned with Trump is I don't believe that political correctness has any place in a nation looking for progress. I mean, you look at science back in the day, people were trying to fight against calling the Earth, flat or round, and even that's still a discussion today, apparently, whether or not the Earth is flat or round. But back in the day, when scientists were trying to redo that model, Galileo, I believe it was, he got completely berated by
sure.
the Christian scientific community who was trying to hold on to the geocentric um, model for so
Hmm.
long because it just gave them uh, uh, I don't know, like a heightened sense in the universe, and it's like
Sure,
where they
sure.
are the more important beings because everything revolves around them. And to
Yeah.
say that we're revolving around something else, completely fundamentally changes how we view ourselves.
Well, bringing it back then to let's say that Trump gets elected. He gets the nomination. He beats Hillary or possibly Bernie Sanders or whoever. Trump president. What do you see being his first year? Because listening to you describe what you like about him, it seemed to some extent somewhat vague on particulars. Beyond immigration, he's been pretty clear on. And you mentioned Planned Parenthood. I'm assuming you're referring to his calls to defund them.
Yes.
Right. Okay. But beyond that, what is year one of a Trump presidency look like? Do you think?
Well, I mean, there is specifics that he has listed that I am aware of. Like he
Sure.
wants to definitely help federalize medical marijuana, which I
Hmm.
think would help a lot of people because it's just a drug that's been ignored for a long time. I'm not sure if you can hear my cat meowing out the door right now. I'm trying to keep him out.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, yeah, so he does want to defund Planned Parenthood. That's another thing. I think within the first year he might go for that. It's really hard to say though, but it depends on how the Congress is looking, how the
Sure.
The
Certainly.
Senate and the House are looking. One of the reasons that Obama really couldn't, people have criticized him, right, for not being able to do everything he said he was going to do. He's up against an almost completely conservative Congress. That's kind of difficult to make change.
Sure.
But
Sure.
let's say that Congress does remain more or less conservative of the majority,
Hmm.
then I think it would be pretty easy for him to do a lot of these things. So I think maybe he could defund Planned Parenthood. Um, he could definitely do the immigration thing for Muslims and possibly deport millions of Mexican children, deport their parents and the children. Like even if the child is legally a United States citizen because he was born here, he would still deport them if they had illegal parents
Right. Right.
because if you've heard of the anchor baby
Right.
issue, which I think is extremely a big problem, and the fact that we haven't fixed that already is makes America an extremely attractive place to hop the border into.
Sure. Certainly.
If we're not even going to deport you back, why would you even be worried about it?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Well. Okay. So let's shift then, thinking about um, maybe if I could raise some of the things that I look at his views and some of the stuff he's articulating, and I do think I'm not 100% with him on immigration, but I think he's on the right track in terms of there's a need to at least to limit this illegal immigration
well,
and
yeah,
just
and
to
it needs to be like extremely reevaluated.
right, yeah, exactly. And that we've got a broken system. You can see where that broken system potentially can lead with some of the recent events in Europe, and time for reassessment. So, again, particulars, not entirely agreement, but at least he's getting attention to the issue. So that's I'm sympathetic to.
That is one of
Um,
my biggest reasons I love Trump is that he's getting people to talk about these
yeah, yeah,
really, really tough and sensitive issues that nobody had the balls to even to talk about before. He
sure.
comes out on the, American political stage. Not just Americans, but people all over the world are adoring him. He was above the Pope in adoration. Like I don't remember who made that. It was a like Time magazine or something had this little poll, and
Yeah.
he scored above the Pope, and that's a pretty big deal there when Trump is above the Pope as far as
Very, very,
adoration goes.
very similar personalities, the two of them, I think, as well. Yeah.
Sure.
Uh, so the so yeah, I think there's some value there. I've seen his tax plan. I think there's some elements that I like there. So I'm somewhat sympathetic to at least some of his positions. But my concern, as I look at him and as I listen to his rhetoric, and this is what I'd like to hear your thoughts on. I look at what he promises, and my fear is, I do think that this election is something of a crisis moment, at least a critical moment for America, where you've got the Obamacare insurance system, which is just spiraling into collapse. I fear.
It's
And
really bad,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm caught in the middle of it right now, trying to get insurance renewed. They butchered my application
Me
this year.
too.
Oh,
Yeah.
good times.
Yeah.
So you've got that. You've got immigration potentially reaching a tipping point as more and more non-citizens could be arriving illegally. You've got the potential for Social Security and other entitlement programs to be collapsing. It's an important moment, and I think there's some of that sense of urgency that our political class hasn't been attending to some really serious problems, and put aside even internationally, rise of Islamic terrorism, etc. So if this is the critical moment, my fear is I listen to Trump, and I think he talks a good game. I think you said that's a lot of the appeal is, man. I mean, he will say things that other people don't say, and I appreciate the fact. I'm glad he's been in the election to shift conversation to at least consider issues, even if I'm not always in agreement. Where he particulars of what he says. He at least makes people consider issues that ought to be considered. So I'm on board there. My fear is, though, is he more than talk? And that's what I'm curious, as I put that to you, what evidence do we have that Trump would be actually effective in the way that he says he'll be effective? It sounds like when there's an issue raised, because I've listened to, I think maybe all but one of the presidential debates on the Republican side so far. And what I always hear is, we're going to fix it. We're going to put top men onto it. So you, as a Trump supporter, why do you trust him? Why do you believe that, in fact, he can do and will do the things that you hope he'll do, if I could ask?
Sure. I mean, trust me, it's not exactly easy. There's already theories floating around that he's a Hillary shill sent
Mm-hmm.
out to show how politically incorrect the GOP voting base is.
Sure.
But uh, he's his background in politics is a lot deeper than a lot of people think.
Okay.
They think he's kind of this, Yafaya. That's like why he got famous. Like, no, this dude is an extremely talented businessman who, has shown competency in changing things, and like he's gone. I think, I think he's filed for bankruptcy 3 times for 3 different of his companies,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. But the point is that he has shown that he's able to, break things down and rebuild them and have them be successful afterwards, which is what I'm hoping to be able to do with American policy.
Now, do you think there's any difference, though? Because I've heard people say that, that there's, we need to run America
Like a
better.
business.
Right. And do you think there is a difference, though, between being a businessman and being president? I mean, obviously there is, but do you think that difference is significant, that the skill sets may not be quite the same?
Certainly, but I think having a set in stone idea of what a president should be is also it's very dangerous.
Hmm.
I think that having a shifting definition of who needs to run the country and what kind of person you need to have running the country at a certain time, like you said, especially in this time of extreme stress for
Mm-hmm.
the American economy, I think we need a businessman right now more than ever who is able to help our economy get back into shape.
Okay.
And like you said, he does give a lot of kind of empty promises, as all politicians do. It's kind of dangerous, though, to release specifics when you're still running in such an early stage of the presidency, because other politicians can either take your ideas, form them into
Sure.
something else, that kind of thing. So I think him being a little bit vague is just kind of political norm, like just normality.
Now you mentioned, other politicians, and to some extent, honestly, I'm not exactly a big fan of the political class at the moment. But
Right.
the nice thing about a politician is you can get a sense, rubber meets the road. They've cast votes or they've made policies, and you can get a sense anyway of, this is, at least to some extent, a picture of how they would be as president. And coming back to just that fear with Trump, looking at him politically, all we've got of his political views is, he has apparently changed his views on a lot of things, going from, he described himself as very liberal on healthcare, whatever, 10, 15 years ago, wanted single payer, nationalized insurance, was pro-choice, whatever, 10, 15 years ago, and, has shifted to more, or at least says he's shifted to more conservative positions. But, beyond those just, this is what I believe statements, and then, political donations where he's donated to both Republicans and Democrats. Was a registered Democrat for a while. If I'm an undecided voter, what can you offer me, as a Trump supporter, that would say this is practically why you can be confident that Donald J. Trump, president, is gonna govern as he says. That, when the rubber meets the road, so many people go to Washington and sort of get captured by the media and the others around them. What would make him different? Why should we trust that what he says he'll do, what he says his views are actually going to be how he would govern?
Well, I would say, as far as to the whole getting captured thing, once you're up on Capitol Hill, he's dealt with so much controversy in his life, and he's dealt with such a large amount of fame and money that I think he has a little bit of a stronger will, perhaps, when he goes up there. I think he's going to be able to keep, his promises a little bit better than the average politician, simply because of his history, and people have seen him be a competent leader of his companies, which again I think is not, or like we were discussing, it's not exactly a perfect parallel to running a country, a business, but I think it still shows that he is competent in those ways. But you were saying from an undecided voter, that's exactly what I was. I don't really consider myself, like I said, Bernie Sanders would be my kind of other
Mm-hmm.
option there,
Sure,
simply
sure.
because of their uh, detachments from the establishment. And I think that I actually do agree with Trump's older views on healthcare as well. And I think him flip-flopping and that kind of thing, I hate that word too, flip-flopping. Like, God forbid you change your mind and
Sure,
and
sure.
and sharpen, your beliefs. I think that's actually fine, really, for anyone to do, as long as you can logically and rationally
Mm-hmm.
back up why you made that change. And he hasn't exactly given a lot of specifics, but he has explained why he's kind of become a little bit more conservative on his views on healthcare after, especially after seeing this switch for America towards a more socialist healthcare system fail. Um,
Sure.
and with 350 million people, it's a really difficult thing to try to compare us to the European nations who have extremely successful, socialist healthcare and that kind of thing. Like those transitions, it's going to be really difficult, and I have no idea whether or not, like you were saying, if Trump's going to be able to, keep his promises and maintain every little thing he's discussing here, like especially making Mexico pay for the wall. Good luck. But the point is that he's sending messages with what he's saying about these things, and he's helping us be aware of these issues by simply bringing up um, how he's bringing them up in his own fashion,
Okay.
without any sort of remorse for political correctness or that kind of thing.
Sure, sure. Now, I'm curious though, going back, because I'm thinking about what you said about running his businesses, and I'm just struck by the thought that when we see Donald Trump's successes, I've read a good deal. I just find the man fascinating as a person. So I've read a good deal about his business and the various, he went through struggles, which frankly everybody does at one point if you're a successful businessman. So no slam on him there. But to the degree where he's been successful, and he's been very successful, it really seems like he's been successful for Donald J. Trump. That he brags about, his skill as a negotiator, and it's to get wins for Donald J. Trump. And I read about when he went bankrupt, and a few times, or well, not personally, but his casinos went bankrupt, and that kind of puts a hurting on the bondholders who were invested in those casinos. And then you read about I've read a number of people talking about how contractors who did work for him had to take only 80% or 70% of what they were owed because of his tough negotiating tactics. So when I look at him, what I see is somebody who is a tough negotiator who makes deals well, but seems to mostly make them to the benefit of Donald Trump. And are there reasons why I should trust that when if he's president, that there's a patriotism there, that there's a pursuit of the good of something bigger than Donald J. Trump? Do you think that's something we can expect from him?
Absolutely. And especially with how he's been talking, what he says, it's very evident that he is very nationalistic and isolationist. And I think the more isolationist you are, is the more, actually appreciative of American culture and what it used to be and what it can be. It's just, that's just how it is for me, is that's for him to see him have those extreme absolutionist views really tells me that he is extremely patriotic. Um, I actually forgot what you had said just a second before that, but I
No,
had
that's
something
fine.
to say to it.
So I was just saying, that it seems like he's in business dealings and such has been mostly out for
Right,
for his
right.
own
So,
benefit.
yeah, so when he's doing these negotiations, that's exactly the kind of person you want to be the president of the United States. Someone who can negotiate properly, strongly, aggressively, and make the end result in the benefit of the United States. It doesn't have to be a mutual benefit
Hmm.
because politics, especially world politics, are chaotic. It's animalistic, it's tribal, it's brutal. And for him to be able to go in there and negotiate for our benefit and not necessarily for some sort of parallel benefit between the two nations, that's actually a good thing, really.
Right. Now yeah, see that's where because when you say that he's negotiating for our benefit, to me that's an assumption. And I'm not sure I've seen him, where I'm not kidding here. In his entire life, where has Trump negotiated for the benefit of anything bigger than Trump? And I think even if he's talked in the debates about how he donated money to to Democrats and even to Hillary herself, several $100,000, I believe. And he says it's because you kind of got to pay to play, and almost embraces that aspect of the corruption of politics in the sense that I'm out for what benefits me. And I get that, as a successful businessman, sadly, that's how the system is.
Yeah,
you know,
he's
you,
he's aware that you have to play the game if you want to be successful.
but see, he's playing it in a way that if I'm using money to buy favors, that hurts the country, that hurts the system. If I'm winning favors for myself, and if that's the record that I'm looking at, I just don't see how he's going to turn around and use, or I don't see why I have reason to believe, why I have reason to trust him, that he'll turn around then after playing the system for his own benefit. What reason do we have to trust that he would, when you say negotiate for us, how do we know it's going to be us he's negotiating for?
Well, when you're giving the example earlier about how he was kind of hurting his contractors with negotiations and that kind of thing, and negotiating whatever he was for himself, he still is keeping businesses alive and employing people. So it is something greater than himself. You say he's not really looking for something greater than himself, but I think businesses that employ all the people that he's employing and he's trying to protect and keep going, that is something larger than himself. And as far as
Okay.
running the nation goes, what do you possibly think he could, score for himself as the president?
Well, I think it seems like when you have the gold-plated, jet, probably he doesn't need a whole lot of dough. But it certainly seems like he's got maybe a tad of an ego, and that's who gets to be president and doesn't.
Yeah.
But that praise, people patting him on the back, people you're the best. I seriously worry, that as we've seen other politicians um, act for their own self-aggrandizement. I just wonder if he's somebody who's given us reason to trust that he would act if there was a conflict between what he wanted and what was good for the country. I've never seen Donald Trump put aside what was good for him for somebody else, and that worries me, honestly.
I could see where that worry comes from. As far as self-aggrandizing goes, if I'm saying that correctly, I really haven't looked into that term too much. Um,
Just
you
being
know,
out for
it
himself.
having that ego and having that being in touch with the personality that you are and being in touch with who people see you as, I think is extremely important.
Hmm.
One of the reasons that Hitler was so successful is that this dude took a country that was in complete economic shambles, and regardless of whatever happened during World War II, I don't really, he obviously made ridiculous mistakes and is a complete idiot and a racist and all that shit. But the point is that Hitler, who gave himself an identity that was so potent that an entire nation of people rallied behind him and had these million people, military marches and all that stuff. The nationalism there has never been seen again. We're
Yeah.
never going to see anything like that ever again, possibly. And to see that Trump has similar characteristics. Obviously, he's finding a common enemy. Hitler's was the Jews, and Trump's is the Muslims. It's a common enemy there that people can kind of rally around, and having righteous hatred is actually a very healthy emotion, and that's what made Christianity survive for so long was the righteous hatred of other religions and the you know getting it in there into European culture, and then they had the Crusades and all that kind of stuff. Having those Crusades and having that righteous hatred and collective identity and viewing each other as co-nationals with a common enemy is extremely beneficial for any nation, especially for long-term just well-being. And
Yeah,
maybe I'm ranting here a little bit.
well, if I could just cut in, if I could, and I'm so tempted to go off on a tangent about the comments about Christianity. So I'll just make a footnote. Not sure I agree with you there.
Sure.
But moving on forward to staying with
Trump.
the question about Trump, I find it fascinating, comparing him to Hitler. And again, I hear you on the caveat. Obviously, you don't want Hitler 2.0, plainly. But when you say that, some of the similarities of his being an effective leader. And I think even recently, maybe you saw that he praised Putin, the Russian dictator, and kind of said, look, sure he kills journalists, sure he suppresses domestic dissent, but man, at least he's a strong leader.
Right. And
And
the same, and he's also been doing that for Netanyahu as well.
sure, sure.
Because Israel literally has walls on its borders. I mean, they're already what Trump wants America to be. The Israeli Jews have already, got that going.
Sure. Well, I guess my concern, even just take Putin, take Hitler. When when you have a leader like that, um, who has that ability to manipulate, I think is a fair word,
Sure.
the population to what he thinks is important, through that sort of tribal attitude. Um, it just doesn't generally work out for anybody.
It
Doesn't
works
gen
out for some people, but it doesn't work out for everyone.
Okay, okay.
And, I think that's part of the universe, really, is you
Hmm.
can't always satisfy everyone. That's
Okay,
just kind
okay.
of how things are. And if you want to run the country the strongest you can with the best nationalist qualities, you're not going to, have everyone approve of it. And that's
Well,
just how it is.
would you say that say Hitler and Putin have on balance been good? Hitler for Germany and Putin for Russia. Would you say on balance their countries are better off for having leaders like that?
Well, Russia has a very unfortunate history because they dabbled in communism, which has
Never
ruined it.
works out.
No, no, it does not.
Yeah.
But for Putin, he's really doing all he can to bring his nation out of the ashes that they're still kind of in. I think their birth rates are still declining, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can you can't have someone as weak as Obama going and running Russia right now because they need a strong leader, and he might be very xenophobic and sorry, phobic, and a little bit racist towards Muslims as well, or at least the people in Russia's government who are talking about right now banning all Muslims from entering the country.
Hmm.
Having that level of xenophobia and racism and that kind of thing obviously doesn't benefit everyone, but again, it's the common enemy
Okay.
that it really comes down to. And I don't think that that kind of stuff is really the end of the world. I think it's actually for the benefit of making the country have citizens who feel a purpose.
Okay.
And it's really hard to feel a purpose in societies like especially as weak as America is right now. Finding a purpose is actually very difficult for people.
Would you say, just because you mentioned the common enemy idea, and I'm actually just kind of curious, who specifically would you see as being the common enemy that Trump is pointing towards?
See, that's a little bit tough. I think he has addressed illegals
Hmm.
as sort of a parasitic enemy
Hmm.
that he wants removed, kind of like a healthy immune system, getting rid of the bad germs. But I would definitely say, and this is not exactly my personal belief, but I think that Trump is saying that Muslims would be the common enemy.
Okay.
And mostly because there is protests happening over in the Middle East, over in these Arab nations against the U.S., against the West. It's not just that Trump is saying these things. And you're seeing obviously these rapes happening in Europe and ISIS threatening to enter Europe through migration. And I'm not saying that ISIS represents Muslims as a whole either,
Sure.
but it really seems like there is a black and white polarization arising between the Western and Eastern world,
Okay.
in a sense. And I wouldn't really say Eastern as in lumping China and Russia with that. Russia more Western, but I don't know. It's really tough to talk about this because it's obviously a very sensitive issue.
Sure. Sure.
But as far as naming a common enemy for the benefit of nationalism and that kind of thing, yeah, I would say that naming Muslims could actually have a very big benefit, as they clearly, many Muslims over in Arab nations do not care what we believe of them. They already hate us, and they know that we're going to continue having different beliefs than them, and having different beliefs apparently offends them. And if that offends them, then okay, they're my enemy.
Okay. Okay. So then, kind of to I think we've covered some thought-provoking ground, really, and kind of summing up, if I could, what I'm sort of think I'm hearing you say is that kind of for you the appeal of Trump is that specifically immigration, you like his policies on that, and then generally just the sort of character and the sort of leader that you feel is what the country needs at this time. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like I said, it comes down to the entertainment value for a lot of people when they're looking at Trump, how he speaks and how he acts. And we need someone like that with that much charisma and that much confidence and that absolutionist, really straightforward, just viewpoint on making sure America is safe and that nationalism is still alive.
Now, do you think, just I guess last question then, you mentioned entertainment value, and I think a big question that a lot of people have is, are Trump voters who many times, just polling, it sounds like a lot of them are not that politically engaged, before this election, and then kind of get inspired by his message. From those you've talked to, do you think people who value him for the entertainment, as it were, people who almost for him, it's sort of a reality TV show kind of fan attitude towards him. Do you think his supporters are going to turn out and vote? Do you think it's going to turn into, real political, points where it counts during the primary elections?
Certainly, he has the largest rallies ever
Okay.
seen historically. I think he's going to have a great turnout for the actual elections. He's already having a great turnout for the polls. Every single time they release a poll, that dude
Sure,
is
sure.
climbing and climbing. He's like 42%. The next one is 13%. I think it's Cruz. As
Right.
far as the last Reuters polls from January 6th goes.
Hmm.
I think he's going to have no problem polling these voters.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I mean, people who aren't very engaged in politics are put off by how kind of sterile and boring it can be.
Yep.
And when you have someone like Trump coming in here kicking down shit, and it's just like, hey, I believe this very strongly, and I'm willing to yell about it and make funny faces about it. People love that shit. They eat it up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's no wonder why Trump is the most popular candidate in the United States right now. And my only worry for him reaching the presidency is Hillary Clinton, and not because of Hillary's voting base, but because of Hillary's ties with the big banks and the establishment as it is already. We don't need another Clinton. We don't need another Bush. We need someone with a new face and a new, bloodstream getting in there and changing things up a little bit.
Well, Trump certainly would be a new face and a new approach, that's for sure.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your time, Gavin. I mean,